Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy, and Eric Lopez along with you here on this. The chill has finally reached, and, UCF football is trying to get out of a chill of their own over the last couple of weeks here, gentlemen. We've got that to talk about and much more here. Have the marshmallows gone on the fire yet, Brian Murphy?
I tell you what, like nothing else, every podcast starts with an awful pun. Just an awful pun.
I'm actually,
even when I hosted, bro?
Is it awful,
no,
or are they just?
Every Jeff
I'm just bad at puns.
Starts with a bad pun.
No, the problem is
there's no need for that.
It's not that I have bad puns. It's just that I'm bad at puns. That's the thing. I try to be personable and just never works. We are Black and Gold.
I'm surprised you didn't start out with, to me, what this week is going to be all about, which is the equinox is here.
Oh yeah, we are eyeball deep in that. We're going to be talking about that and a lot more here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Blackandgoldbanneret.com is where you can find us. Part of SB Nation, of course. You can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and follow us individually at Jeff_Sharon, Spokes_Murphy, and Eric Lopez Elo. And let's start the show, gentlemen, with some breaking news. We are in the transactions agate, Brian Murphy. We have officially, will allow us to introduce to you the newest member of Black and Gold Banneret. Really happy to have him on board. You may know him on Twitter as Squints_15. He's a UCF graduate and an absolute guru in terms of football analysis. I have completely fallen in love with this guy's writing, and he is now part of us here at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Anthony Lenahan is on board. Anthony, how are you, bud?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me. I don't know if I would go as far as saying guru, but I appreciate the kind words.
Okay, but you're already way out in front of all of us in terms of what you've been doing, and we're happy that you had your first piece up there today, which is awesome. And make sure you check it out. And we're going to have Anthony on board here in our first segment to talk about UCF football heading into their game after 2 weeks plus a day off. They are facing the Tulane Green Wave in New Orleans. Let's call it what it is. UCF is trying to get off the schneid after that loss at Tulsa, which seems like a month ago. I'm sure if it feels like that to us, I'm sure it feels like that to the players. As the Knights come in at 7-3, they are 6-point favorites over the Green Wave in New Orleans. 66% of the money is on UCF. The over/under is at 69.5. Tulane comes in 6-4, but they're a pretty doggone good 6-4. If you ask me, Justin McMillan is their quarterback, who has led us a resurgence of the Green Wave here. Even though they've cooled off a little bit, it still feels as though this could be a very dangerous game for UCF. Anthony wrote a massive preview of Tulane on offense, which we'll get to in a second. But Brian, I first want to start with you. You are over there at practice. You're not at practice. You're just outside practice.
No, I sleep inside Nicholson Fieldhouse. It's fine.
You slip inside. I know that you're able to, sneak in there and hide around corners and things like that. But the atmosphere in the building in the 2 long weeks since the loss at Tulsa, what is going on inside the kingdom?
I think everybody's saying the right things, right? Like, you're not going to have anybody with the knives out, with 2 games to go in the regular season saying, well, this is a lost season and we're going to play for wanting to play for ourselves now. Like, no, I mean, they're all saying the right things. They all want to finish strong. I've got no, hot tidbits of infighting or people complaining to coaches. It's sort of boring right now. It really is. It's usually how it is coming out of bye weeks. It's pretty boring. You look for storylines, and there's just not a whole lot because we sort of exhausted everything after the Tulsa game, and now the week after that, or 2 weeks after that, what do we talk about? Well, we feel great, or we're ready to get back out there. We're ready to redeem ourselves. Yeah, okay, great. I mean, it doesn't really say anything,
No, I hear you. Eric is, as far as what UCF has to do in this game. Obviously, the division is gone. What is at stake here?
You're not going to spin. Wait a minute. You're not going to give us you're not going to spin like this great crazy scenario that Cincinnati loses out and UCF wins.
No, I'm not.
You're going to give me? Oh, wow.
I'm not. I'm out. So now at this point, obviously, well, next week speaks for itself against South Florida. But what does this game mean for UCF?
Well, it means you want to bounce back. I mean, you do still want to finish strong. I do think. Look. I mean, officially, for the record, there is still a chance they can win the division. I mean, if Temple were to beat Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden Cincinnati's got to go to Memphis, things could happen. I mean, it's very crazy. I don't want to get into a detail, but look, I think it's important to this team to finish strong. I mean, I think if you can win out here, get to 10-3, I think you got an outside shot of finishing the year in the top 25. But more importantly, I think you got a shot to be a top 25 team in the preseason polls next year. So I think you want to move forward and proceed with that and make the most out of it. The last thing you want to do is drop another game here. Now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, people already feel like it's a disappointing season out there. Now you don't want to give them more ammunition. So, look, I think it's about bouncing back. I think it's about, cleaning some things up. It's about, Dylan Gabriel getting more snaps and getting better. And to me, I do think the bye helps in that regard. I think they've had a chance to reflect on some things, and we'll see. I expect them to come out ready to play, actually, on Saturday.
Brian, did injury-wise, I think the bye week helped,
Yeah, I think the only major name was that of Greg McCray, and Greg is going to go. Heupel left no doubt there on Monday, saying he's 100%, and even running backs coach Anthony, I forgot his last name.
Tucker.
Anthony Tucker. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah.
Anthony Tucker said today that if the UCF had played a game last week, that McCray would have played in that game. I mean, it seemed like he was pretty close to going against Tulsa. And I know we get wary of coaches lying to us with injuries because, coaches lie. But Heupel did say going into that game that they were going to take that up to the last, the day of the game, and it just seemed like that he didn't feel right, and they held him out for that game against Tulsa. But he's been ready now for more than a week, and so yeah, they have really their quartet of top running backs at this stage of the season are all relatively healthy, and that's something that a lot of teams can't say.
Well, at least that's good news coming in. Let's bring in the new guy, Anthony Lenahan, here to talk a little bit about Tulane, because Anthony, you got this huge breakdown up on the site right now, blackandgoldbanneret.com, where you go way in depth on the Tulane offense and Justin McMillan, who scares the absolute living daylights out of me. This season, he's thrown for over 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns. He leads Tulane in rushing with 552 yards and another 12 touchdowns. To Tulane, they got off to that hot start. They started 5-1. Their only loss in that first 6 games was against Auburn, and it was at Auburn. And then they hit the hard part of the schedule. At Memphis, loss. At Navy, loss. Home to Tulsa, they got a win. It was a tight one, but they got the win. And then at Temple, loss. So they come into this game losers of 3 of the last 4, but still feel like they haven't landed their big blow of the season on anybody yet. You broke this down. What do we know about the Tulane Green Wave coming into this game?
Yeah, so Tulane is one of the most efficient offenses in the country. I mean, from a straight EPA standpoint, which is expected points added, I'll probably refer to it throughout a lot of my analysis, podcasts, whatever I write for you guys. So that's something that I'll refer to a lot. It's pretty much the best measure of efficiency that you could get in terms of football. So they're one of the most efficient teams in the country offensively. And their offense coordinator, Will Hall, is a spectacular mind. They're going to run the ball a lot, which I think has been a major factor in their losses, actually. Their desire to run the ball on early downs. So I think that's a big key to this game for them. But they're just going to be a fun team to watch, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more here, but it's going to be a fun game in my opinion.
Styles make fights, I think, is kind of what you're saying here, because UCF right now averaging just under 45 points a game and 541 yards. Tulane themselves are averaging 35 points a game and 460 yards of offense per contest, but they rush for more than they pass, 255 to 204. When you broke down Justin McMillan, what stood out to you? Because I read your piece, and you I feel the same way that you do, that this guy is really dangerous and could present a real problem, not just this weekend, but in the coming years for Tulane. What stands out about him to you?
Well, he's unbelievable with his feet, which if you watch him play at all, you'll notice that right away. And that's a threat. If you look at a lot of quarterbacks that UCF has lost to, they've been hurt by mobile quarterbacks, not even guys as mobile as McMillan. If you look at the Pitt game, Kenny Pickett had a bunch of key scrambles on that last drive. Just overall, when coverage is good and the quarterback could get out of the pocket and run for 10, 15 yards, it's killed UCF a lot on key plays. And McMillan is the best runner they'll face. He's one of the best runners in the country. If you look at a straight number standpoint, efficiency standpoint, he's the best running back on their team. If you want to call him a running back, he averages 0.5163 EPA per rush and is running with a success rate of 67%, which is unbelievable. Success rates basically on first down runs, you're gaining 50% of the yards to go. Second down run, 70%, and third and fourth down is 100%. And that's not even including scrambles. He forces a missed tackle about 14% of rushes. So he's just an elusive quarterback, and he's not afraid to get down and slide. He's not going to take hits. But as he's so good at running, but he's also a lot better at throwing when he's getting out on bootlegs and rollouts off of play action, which is extremely hard to defend because it almost opens up an RPO game where he could run on the bootleg or throw, which just adds a whole nother dimension to defend from a defensive standpoint.
Right. I should correct myself. I said that he would be good in the coming years. He's actually, I didn't realize this until just now, he's a graduate student. I knew he transferred over from LSU, but I thought he was a mid-career transfer. I didn't realize he was a grad student transfer. 6'3", 205. He's from originally Cedar Hill, Texas. All right, so UCF's defense, Randy Shannon. What is the formula for confusing Justin McMillan and getting him to not do the amazing things that we just went over that he can do?
Get Tulane in third and long and second and long. It's obviously easier said than done. I think they're probably going to play a spy. I don't know how much that's exactly going to help because McMillan's going to be able to outrun linebackers. He's going to be able to make them miss. Just it's not exactly easy to contain them. So they're going to have to – Tulane's going to most likely try and run the ball on first and second down. And they're one of the best running teams in the country. I think I saw last week they have 6 running backs over 200 yards, which is the only team in the country, which is incredible.
Wow.
So getting them there, you kind of see Lamar Jackson. I kind of wanted to make this comparison, comparing Lamar and McMillan. Not obviously McMillan is not Lamar Jackson, but they're playing the same style. McMillan's not exactly going to be the most accurate quarterback when he's forced to sit in the pocket and throw the ball. if you get him off his game and get him in obvious passing situations, Tulane's offense has really struggled, and that's been the big key in their 3 losses.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, his season high for rushing yards in a game is only 91. And I say that because, we talk about how good his rushing game has been. You would think that a guy like him has run for 1,000 or has run for 100 yards in one game, but he has not just yet. In the losses at Memphis, he threw 3 picks. Let's see. Tally it up. In their victories, he's thrown a grand total of, I'm counting them up right now, 2 against Tulsa, 1 against MSU, so that's 3. In the losses, he's thrown, 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So there you go, right there. It's keeping him back there and not allowing him to run around with impunity and find open guys. He's rushed for a touchdown in every game except the Auburn game. So, or rather, in his last game, he also did not rush for a touchdown in that game. So, all right. So let's flip sides over to the UCF offense and Dillon Gabriel. You broke down a little bit of Dillon in your article today, coming out of the Tulsa game. What is going on right now with Dillon Gabriel and his progress over the year? I know that he took a lot of heat, as did Josh Heupel, for the loss at Tulsa, especially in the second half. And the thought is that he just kind of gets into the same patterns over and over again when UCF is down, especially in the second half. So, what in your analysis have you seen from Dillon Gabriel over to this point in the season that is something that UCF needs to be mindful of heading into this game?
Yeah, I think Dillon's been terrific. I think you're crazy to think if, especially the Tulsa game, was anywhat remotely on him. He's been more than you could ask for, and I think more than you would probably have gotten out of any of the other quarterbacks. And I'm someone who loves DJ Mack. I was very excited for him last year when he got the opportunity to play and did really well against Memphis. So I really like Max, but I just think you're crazy if you think that replacing Gabriel with Mack would have changed outcomes of games. His deep ball is one of the best in the country throughout the first handful of games. I think he was throwing, the amount of air yards he was completing was exceptional. So that's just something that you can't really teach, the deep ball. And it's something that's going to stick with him. But I think where UCF needs to grow from a scheme perspective and just a total offense perspective is just being able to not have to rely on the deep ball to win games and to be able to throw the ball short. And if you look at how Cincinnati and Tulsa, for the most part, defended UCF, they kind of played soft coverage and wanted to take away the deep ball. I know Tulsa was playing 2 high and 3 high safeties most of the game, which they're taking away the deep ball. UCF was able to get in a couple, but in the losses to Cincinnati and Tulsa, Gabriel was only completing 4.4 air yards per attempt and 3.96 air yards per attempt, which is 3 to 4 yards lower than what he's completing in wins. So it's just showing you how much emphasis those two defenses were on taking away the deep ball. And UCF actually had a lot of success in the short to intermediate passing game in those 2 games. They just kind of went away from it. So I think I want to see how they could kind of not rely on the deep ball and win a game.
It does feel like sometimes in those games, I particularly come back to, and Brian, we talked about this too, right? Was especially in that Cincinnati game, it's like that was the blueprint because Gabe Davis had, I think it was a season high, I think it was a career high, wasn't it, Brian? It was like 13 catches, but for only about 130 some yards, so 10 yards a catch, which is well below his season average. I think it was like half of his season average, at least at that point. Is that right, Brian?
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure of his line. I do know that he had 21 or 22 targets in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was even more than that.
Yeah, and they just simply the Cincinnati was not going to let him get past them. So the read every single time for Gabriel was it was like a classic run and shoot read. If they're long, I'm short. If they're short, I'm long. And they just played him long, and so he had to throw to him short the whole time. And then it seemed like Dylan Gabriel started getting a little bit impatient with that, and they started forcing the issue deep, and that's where UCF, I think, got into trouble in that game. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. I think my concern, shifting it back to this game, is, and Anthony, I want you to chime in on this. UCF's defense is known for bringing its pressure with, lots of linebackers blitzing and corner blitzes, safety blitzes. I wonder in an attack like this that is so excelling in the run game, where you sort of want to force McMillan to be a passer, if it doesn't help you more to try to box him in with 4 men and then try to just spy him with, again, not only just one guy, but 2 guys. Because if you bring the house and he makes you miss, then he's got a ton of room behind you. I worry about that. I worry about him breaking contain when we are over aggressive on defense.
Yeah, that's definitely a worry. Because if you bring 6 or 7 guys, even you're pretty much in man, you have to play man against pretty much any personnel, unless it's a heavy personnel, which bringing 6 or 7 is completely normal. But Tulane loves to send out everybody. They'll go 5-man protection most of the time. So it's hard to bring 6 or 7, whatever you could bring, and then you're in man with the defenders all turned to the quarterback. So once he breaks the line of scrimmage, it's pretty much game over if you do that.
Yeah. So it's going to be.
I think what's great about what Anthony put on the site today is, you can see what we're talking about. He gives us clips, and you can see how dangerous not only what McMillan does, but the various sets that Tulane sets up in, all the misdirection and the RPOs, and really the creative ways that, again, they get their guys in position to make plays. And there's a lot of things that UCF's defense is going to need to pay attention to. And unfortunately, a lot of it's going to be, fakes and misdirections, and they're going to need to figure out what is real and what isn't.
Yeah. Last question for you here, Anthony, before we let you go. If you're a fan watching this game, what's the one thing that you see on each side of the ball that will be a good sign for UCF, both one on offense and one on defense? If we see UCF doing this on offense, it's going to be a good day. And if we see them doing this on defense, it's going to be a good day.
On offense, I think it just comes down to pass protection. Against Tulsa, was brought 3 or 4 guys pretty much every single drop back, and they were still getting pressure. When you drop 7 or 8 guys into coverage, and UCF runs a lot of 7-man protection, you just can't win like that if you're letting up pressures on 3 or 4-man rushes with 7-man protection. You're leaving yourself 7 or 8 guys in coverage to cover 3 guys. It's impossible to have an efficient offense like that. So I think that's huge. Gabriel, I think he's going to be a lot better being able to get out of the pocket and stuff like that as he gets a little bit older, and adds that to his game. But it's still extremely difficult with how quick his reads seem to be and how fast his kind of progressions are limited, with just kind of looking towards one side of the field and kind of only having 1 or 2 options maybe on every play. So when those get taken away, it's almost impossible when you're getting pressured in 2.5, 3 seconds against a 3 or 4-man rush. So I think that's what the offense comes down to. It's been a major factor in all the losses. Cincinnati, there's pressure that destroyed him too.
Yeah.
Defensively, just not getting fooled by all the eye candy. I've watched every single Tulane play this season rather closely. I don't know if that's something I should be proud of or not, but they do a ton of fun stuff, from route combinations to O-line blocking schemes on run plays to just motions. It's a ton of fun to watch, and kind of fallen in love with the offense, to be quite honest. So I'm looking forward to see how this offense looks against UCF, and how if they could keep it a game. But if you look at UCF's defense last year, I haven't really charted it this year. It's just very time consuming. But last year they got destroyed on routes that kind of ended up at rub routes or pick routes or just any type of combo routes, because they play like their coverage was more of man switch. So when two guys crossed, they were trying to pass them off from corner to corner or corner to linebacker, which is why you saw like Nate Evans get stuck on a slot receiver, outside receiver a lot. So I think Tulane runs a lot of those kind of plays where they're running guys all over the field and crisscrossing guys. So I think that's going to be key to see how UCF responds to all the motion kind of that Tulane's going to throw at them.
Excellent breakdown, Anthony. Can't tell you how much we appreciate it and sort of taking the magic and making it clear to see here. So before we let you go, how can fans follow you here now that you're part of the team? And then and what are some of the things that you really want to do, not just throughout the rest of the year, but in the upcoming off season?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at squints_15. Pretty much, I tweet out a lot of stuff, a lot of thoughts, all post game. I don't really like to kind of react in game. I kind of like to rewatch and do all my nerdy stuff before I kind of comment on everything. So,
you're much smarter than the rest of us for doing that,
so
by the way.
Don't look for anything in game there. And then a couple ideas I have in mind going forward is I want to really look at UCF's routes on every pass play. So it's something I started to do is chart defensive coverage depth with how many high safeties and what route every player runs on that play, depending on if they get the ball or not. Kind of look at my initial hypothesis is that UCF's basically all their pass plays are option routes. So like we said before, if Cincinnati's forcing you to throw short, if they're not getting press coverage, they're going to run like a 6-yard hitch or curl or something along that nature, compared to when you're getting press man on the outside and Gabe's just going to go deep. And I think you've seen it a couple times with miscommunications because of this. The intentional grounding in the fourth quarter, the Tulsa game on the last drive was just, they ran that play 2 other times, and against the same exact coverage, they ran the wheel route down the sideline, and that's what Gabriel threw, and then Trey stopped on that. So I think that's kind of why you saw some miscommunications there. So I kind of want to look at that with kind of the progressions. And then something I'm also thinking about is I have like a opinion that UCF's offense is built to like score points, but it's not necessarily a cohesive offense, if that makes sense. So,
Well, I mean, it does feel like there's some pieces that are kind of in transition. So I see what you mean by that, and I've kind of wondered that too. So I'd be interested to see how you break that down and see that. Go ahead with what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I want to go through and kind of look at all drives for every team and look at the amount of 3 and outs and stuff like that and see how deep I could go into it. I have every play-by-play of the entire season for every FBS team in Excel. So kind of want to see what I could kind of play with that around and see what comes up with that. Kind of just want to learn to do a little bit more studies, a little bit with the entire FBS and look at stuff like that and maybe conference related rather than try to broaden it out and give a little context behind what UCF is in certain categories.
Well, Anthony, we are very lucky to have somebody who knows how to do all that on staff now, and we really appreciate you coming on board. And here's to having you on the podcast a lot more often and seeing and having the canvas on which you can paint the pictures that you want to paint. So we really appreciate you coming on. Again, squints_15 on Twitter. Make sure you follow him and check out his breakdown of Tulane's offense and the progress on UCF's side of the ball, on the UCF offense side of the ball, heading into this weekend's game. Anthony, thanks again for joining us, man. We really appreciate it. We'll talk to you down the line.
Appreciate you having me.
All right, and stick around. When we return, Brian and Eric will join me here as we break down some men's soccer, actually, with UCF heading into the NCAAs. Eric's got his blowtorch ready that he's going to take to the NCAA committee, and a bunch more here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast when we return. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here. Follow us, as always, at blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_Banneret on Twitter. Eric, real quick, before we move on to other things, you had a couple of interesting trends you wanted to point out that we missed in the previous segment. Go ahead.
Well, I got a couple trends. I want both your reactions. One is a gambling trend, and one is, I don't know if it's a gambling trend, but it's interesting. So there's a negative and a positive trend I have for UCF.
All right, start with the bad news first.
Yeah, get it out of the way. UCF has not covered 6 of their last 7 games.
I'm not surprised by that because I feel like some of these. I felt the entire season like some of these lines that UCF have been thrown at UCF are a little inflated, don't you, Brian?
A little bit. I think this one against Tulane is pretty legit.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, maybe so. But there's been a bunch of backdoor covers.
That's true. That's also true. I think that people forget about that too. And UCF is they're the kings of the backdoor of allowing the backdoor cover out here. But what was the other thing you had, Eric?
Yeah, on the positive end though, UCF has won 8 of their last 12 games that have kicked off at noon. This is since 2016. Because some people have messaged me about, oh my God, noon game. They're going to sleepwalk through this game. What's going to happen? Actually, UCF's very good at noon. They're 8-4 since 2016 in games that have kicked off at noon. In contrast, Tulane is only 6-7 in noon games, and they've only played 13 noon games since 2013.
Well, how good is UCF at 11 a.m. games? Because it's 11 a.m. local.
Well, this strat is noon or
noon
under.
Eastern. Noon Eastern, I guess you could say,
noon
right?
or lower. Like, for example, the Fiesta Bowl counts towards that number I gave you because that would be, as you know, that was a 10:30, 11:30 kick there in Glendale.
That was 11 a.m. That was an 11 a.m. start.
11 a.m. Glendale start.
Yeah, it was 11 a.m.
Yeah, so they've won noon games and or earlier. They're 8-4. So contrary to what some might think, they've actually played well in early games.
And when is this game? CBS Sports Network, 12 noon Eastern time. So 11 a.m. kick locally in New Orleans, by the way. Ben Holden, Ross Tucker, and Ashley Holder will be the crew for this game. And by the way, we have the start time for UCF's final regular season game against South Florida. It will be on ESPN at 8 p.m. on Black Friday. How about the prime time setup for that? Now, I know we're going longer than we wanted to on this subject, but how about the strength of the Warren and I-4 rivalry that both teams are kind of having off years this year, I think, in the eyes of the national audience, all right? And yet this game gets prime time on the mothership. That's a favorable time slot, very favorable time slot, if you ask me, right?
It's a good slot. It's not the slot. I mean, the slot is ABC 330, as we know from a couple of years ago. But the only reason. Let's cut to the chase. The reason they got the 8 p.m. slot is to keep Brian Murphy's dream alive, of a possibility of doing the unthinkable, the unheard of, the most insane thing possibly ever done by a UCF media member. Cover both UCF basketball and football in completely different coast on the same weekend.
Shocking.
It's still alive.
It's still alive. And I will say that as I'm continuing to give this more thought, and really, the time of this game, as much as I have been pressing about it and going through all the permutations of, well, it can't be early, it's got to be late. Actually, now it probably doesn't matter. It could be late or early, because I'm now looking more toward the Sunday Championship Day finale of the John Wooden Classic. I would leave Saturday, go to Anaheim for Sunday basketball, and then return that Monday morning for a possible, I don't know, maybe they would hold the press conference or not, because they wouldn't be in the conference championship game. So maybe it'd be like a bye week where maybe I'll stay an extra day in California. Maybe I won't come back till Wednesday.
Look at you scoring points with Coach Dawkins by pulling that off. All right.
I mean, listen, I'm going to go on record. If you pull this off, Murph, I will call for a Brian Murphy statue in between the basketball arena and the football stadium to be built. That's all I'm saying.
We will mint that thing ourselves, and we will get
right.
Dan Forcella's approval for this. No doubt about it. All right, let's switch gears here to the other football. Let's talk men's soccer. UCF got to the championship game of the American once again, but it was a championship at home, finally breaking through against SMU after 2 consecutive years of losing to the Mustangs in the championship game. It was not to be. 1-0 final. SMU got the victory, and their 3rd consecutive victory over UCF in the American championship game. So that led to Selection Monday, where we were thinking, Eric Lopez, that UCF, if they won the conference, they could have had a shot at a top 4 national seed. If they didn't, or so we thought, if they didn't, all bets were off. But as it turns out, UCF gets the number 9 national seed. Only 16 teams are seeded. UCF is the number 9 national seed, so they get the bye. That's the good news, and they host. But they're on the other side of the in the next round. They would face a rematch with SMU. SMU came in at the number 8 seed. The Knights were 8th in the coaches poll, and they were in the top 5 in the RPI. And you, Eric Lopez, in a piece on Black and Gold Banneret, as I said earlier, took a blowtorch to the NCAA Olympic Sports Committees and broke down exactly how it doesn't seem like these people watch any soccer, or at least have been paying close attention especially in the last 3 weeks here, as UCF was initially a 6th seed when they revealed their top 16 as of November 1st, and then they dropped 2 spots while the action around them kind of was a little bit more chaotic than everybody thought. So my question to you is, all right, so UCF plays the winner of Missouri State and Denver at home on Sunday at 6. Go ahead. What's up?
Well, not only let's get into the fact they got a raw deal in the seed. They should have been a top 8 seed. All the numbers, and I break it down on the article at blackandgoldbanneret.com. I broke down the schedule strength, the non-conference schedule strength. I have every data that committee has. I know exactly what they're looking at, and clearly they don't know how to understand. Clearly they don't concept it, or they don't care. UCF, okay, not only has one of the top conference schedules in the country, 15th toughest schedule, which is better than every team that was seeded higher than them as far as the bubble seeds. We're talking the SMUs, the Stanfords, the Washingtons, and Indianas. They had a better non-conference schedule than all of those teams. To give you a perspective, UCF's non-conference schedule, which is the schedule you can control, 33. All right, Washington, who's seeded higher than them, 141. Stanford, 155. Clemson, 180. Give me a break. By the way, there's 206 teams in college Division I men's soccer, to give you an idea how bad those numbers are. And yet those teams got rewarded. Now you might say, well, maybe the conference took down UCF. Actually, the American is rated the 3rd strongest conference, according to the RPI, higher than the Pac-12, which had Washington and Stanford seated higher than UCF, and higher than the Big Ten, which is a 6. They're in 6th place in the conference, and they put Indiana ahead of them. Well, maybe that UCF just didn't have enough top 50 wins. Well, UCF has 5 wins against the top 50. Stanford has 4. Indiana, 4. Hello, Washington, 6. None of these numbers make any sense for UCF not to be a top 8 seed. What did make sense, though, and I pointed this out and I found out, is in the committee there was a representative from the Pac-12, which just so happened to have 2 teams in the top 8 seeds.
Hey, I got a question for you. How many representatives from the American?
That would be 0.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
The ACC had representation, including a head coach from the ACC that got a top 4 seed. But whatever. Whatever. So it's a joke. It's a joke. But all right, so we get that out of the way, okay? But I don't want. So not only do they get a bad seed, they get paired up with SMU,
right?
And their biggest rival. And as Scott Calabrese describes here on Monday on Selection Show, even he was surprised when he saw SMU on his side of the bracket.
That did stick out to me. That was a possibility, and you couldn't have two teams more familiar with each other over the past 3 years than us. So I was surprised that we got put in that bracket with them, because I feel like the committee usually tries to keep those conference rivalries apart until later on. But both teams know each other. If that happens, I'd love that opportunity, and I think our guys would love that opportunity.
That was Scott Calabrese from the Selection Monday show on campus. SMU, and this is the thing, SMU was the 8th national seed on November 1st by this committee. They did not lose a match the rest of the way. They win the American Conference Championship in Orlando, which included a win over UCF, who's a top 5 team, top 6, top 10, okay? And they stayed at number 8. What? What the heck is that? Meanwhile, Washington loses a couple times during the week. Stanford loses a couple times, and they move up, and Stanford moves up. Washington pretty much drops only to 6. What the heck is that about? It's absolutely absurd. But then the best one of them all, you mentioned, Jeffrey, UCF will host Sunday night, 6 p.m. They're going to play the winner of Denver and Missouri State. The Missouri State team that is the only team in the country that is undefeated. They're 17-0-1. They're ranked 12th in the country in the polls. They're number 12 in the RPI. They're top 10 offensively and defensively. They have one of the best goal scorers in the country. They were the number 12 national seed on November 1st. They did not lose a match. Remember, I said they were undefeated. And magically drops out of the top 16 seed in 17 days without losing a match.
So what you're saying is UCF got stuck into the group of death, is what you're saying. Because
there was a listener a podcast that described the group of death, which is what's described to every 4 years when the World Cup in men's soccer, and there's a tough draw where everybody's good in a specific group that's clearly the better group than everybody else, and they call it the group of death. Yeah, this is the group of death. UCF is the only national seed that potentially, we don't know yet because Missouri State's got to play Thursday night as we record this Wednesday night. UCF potentially would have to go through 3 top 12 teams in the RPI, 3 top 12 teams just to get to the College Cup. They're the only team that's the only team that has that path.
Yeah. I tell you, it's and by the way, that was Eric Edwards, UCF One Big Ohana on Twitter, who I wanted to credit Eric on that. But it's just bizarre. And by the way, Denver, for those of you who listen to the podcast closely, they don't have that great goal scorer anymore that they had last year, Andre Shinyashiki. They finished 6-11-3 this year, but won their conference. So that's why they got in, and that's why they're playing Missouri State in the first round here.
Right. Who has the goal? Matthew Bentley. That's a name to keep in mind. Great name, by the way. Matthew Bentley. 14 goals on the year. Him and Cal Jennings, 2 of the top 10 goal scorers in the country. Potentially, if Missouri State wins Thursday, could be on the same field come Sunday night at UCF. And for the second week in a row, Jeffrey, they would have to face a top 10 offense and a team that's ranked inside the top 12 in the country. SMU is ranked 10th. Now Missouri State 12th, back-to-back weeks for Coach Calabrese and the Knights.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be but again, a big game on Sunday here. At least they get the bye, so they get a lot of time off to get healthy, to get ready, and then, not a moment too soon because they're going to be playing a really tough opponent. Most likely, you never know because this is soccer, but they'll be playing a tough opponent in Missouri State. So I believe you had one more clip from Calabrese. Is that right?
Yeah, more positive clip or more interesting. Coach Calabrese reacting, as we tend to forget, Jeffrey. This is now the second consecutive year UCF makes the NCAA tournament. There was a drought prior to Coach Calabrese's arrival. They're making the tournament for the second year in a row. His thoughts on that and what he thought about the seeding that he got.
It's amazing to have the opportunity to return to the NCAA tournament. You see the field is incredibly strong. So to be able to continue our season and, especially to get a seed, which means you have a bye, you can really prepare for, the potential 2 teams that you're going to face. You get a little bit of rest so that you're coming into that game on Sunday fit, fresh, ready to go. It's tough. We always like to think, that we're a top team, and to be seeded means you are a top team. And ultimately there are people in that room, and I'm sure that they had reasons that were completely valid for why they seeded us where they seeded us. And to be honest, as long as we have the bye, which I think gives us a little bit more time to prepare, at this point, no matter what your seed, you are going to face either a team that's just won a championship and is flying high, or a team that has had an incredible season and puts themselves in this top 48. So honestly, it doesn't matter.
And that was Scott Calabrese from Monday, head coach there, talking about all that. So we'll see what happens Sunday. Murph, you were with me there. Great crowd on Saturday night against SMU, 1,237. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest crowd ever to see a UCF men's soccer game. Cold conditions in the 40s. Saw a great match, SMU UCF. Hopefully a similar turnout Sunday because UCF might need that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, they were so close. And you talk about how much that one loss might have changed their seeding. Really, I thought they dominated that game. Second half, especially. They had possession for basically the entire half, and just couldn't get one in the back of the net. A lot of their corners weren't on target, and it just didn't happen. And it just goes to show the thin line between a win and a loss, and because of that, they are where they are, which, as you've laid out beautifully, is probably the toughest road of anybody in the 48.
Yeah. Well, we know this: if they get through, let's assume it's Missouri State, most likely. They get through Missouri State, they got to face SMU. They get through SMU, they got to face who?
Virginia?
Number one overall seed, Virginia. That's right. So it is, insofar as it's not the group of death, but it's certainly the bracket of death for Scott Calabrese and UCF. But if they have the offense to do it, they may indeed have the offense to do it. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Sunday at 6 p.m. on campus at UCF against Missouri State or Denver. So mark your calendars for that. All right, let's switch gears over to hoops. And I want to talk about men's basketball. As the season, I was about to call it the preseason because the coaches call it the preseason. Even though it's not the preseason, the games count. But after the loss to Miami at home, UCF had a 5 days off and then a tough trip out to Illinois State, which is up in the rather appropriately named Normal, Illinois. A site of UCF's big NIT victory a couple years ago. And actually, it's a few years ago. It's a long time ago, actually, when you come to think of it. But UCF got a key victory over the Redbirds, 67-65. The Knights actually trailed by 9 at the half, and then outscored the Illinois State by 11 in the second half. Colin Smith, nice game, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 6 of 12 from the field, 17 points from Brandon Mahan. Darren Green Jr. had 13 points off the bench. Also, I should say, Mahan had 10 rebounds as well off the bench. And Brian, you followed this game very closely, and you had you came up with your analysis of it. I thought was pretty astute, where it seems as though Johnny Dawkins and UCF, they've kind of found a little bit of a stride in terms of a lineup, and it might have been just matchups, but they found a unit that seemed to work here. Can you go into more depth on that?
Yeah, and I believe your preface is correct, and that we don't want to get too far out in front and say, well, they've got it, they're together.
Oh my God, they've got it. Sweet 16, here we come.
Problem solved. Yeah, this could have been just a matchup issue where they took advantage of Illinois State's lack of size. So basically, what they would do is put Avery Diggs and Colin Smith, both big men, on the floor, and basically have them run a high-low game with Avery setting screens at the top of the circle, kind of the top of the post, and sort of feeding in from there to Colin down low. But also because Brandon Mahan has no conscience as a shooter, and because Darren Green as a freshman looks outstanding already, they've got options on the wings where if they're going to crash on Colin down low, they got Mahan and Darren Green on the wings who can hit threes in bunches. And Dazon Ingram is running the point pretty well. But I think the star of this game really was Avery Diggs, a guy that no one really knew a whole lot about, a JUCO transfer who even admitted in the preseason, like how different it is here, you can dominate in JUCO because it's JUCO, but like he could tell in the exhibition season just how much he had to change his game, his body, and everything like that to keep up. And I thought you saw him break out in this game, not only as a low post scorer, also he showed he could turn around and shoot from about 12 feet, 15 feet. He also showed good passing out of the post. I think Avery Diggs is an extremely important part of this team right now, and that's not something I thought I would say 3 games ago.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just to your point, Jeffrey, I think the 5 that we saw that really worked was Colin Smith and Avery Diggs at the 4 and the 5, and then having Brandon Mahan and Darren Green Jr. on the wings.
You're still trying to get the names right, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I'm still thinking of Anthony Tucker.
Right.
And then having Dazon Ingram run the point. And that leaves them with a lot of options on the bench, obviously. I mean, they were starting Cesar DeJesus early on. They can still bring him off the bench, or maybe he's more comfortable. Remember, Cesar's basically been a bench player for this team the last couple of years. Frank Burtz, same thing. He's sort of been a microwave guy off the bench. Matt Milan is still struggling. He is now, I believe, 1 for 14 from 3-point range. I still believe he'll turn it around. It's only 3 games, but he is in a
feels like he's pressing a little bit. It's the hometown kid.
Is, and he's not. And unfortunately, he's not adding enough defensively to be really worth the time. So you saw him basically be abandoned in that second half. I think in the second half box score, he played 2 minutes in the second half. Matt Milan. I mean, this is a guy that you thought was going to be really their starting 2 or 3. And they absolutely went away from him in that second half of that game, and it worked out great because they found something that worked against Illinois State.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been really impressed with Diggs, even from the first game where we saw some flashes of a different kind of skill set. He looks really. I thought he looked more refined than I was anticipating as a big guy. Having him down there with Smith, I think we got to give a ton of credit to Colin Smith. Who's kind of taken the torch and stepped it up big time. I mean, we knew he had the talent to do it, but I think he's actually playing above his head right now. And I'm really surprised at how comfortable Dazon Ingram looks running the point right now. I mean, we know how talented he is. He's an experienced player, obviously, as a redshirt senior, having played in the SEC before, but that doesn't make what he's doing any easier, right? And the fact that he's been able to, at 6'6", be such a threat is I was actually pretty impressed with him. How about you?
No, definitely. I think what he brings. They were using Cesar at the 1 a little bit this season, but what really Dazon brings is he's 6'6".
Yeah, he's physical.
I mean, he really shows it. I think when he wants to use his size, because he's a pretty good driver, and when he really gets behind his shoulders and really uses his size, he's really difficult to stop going full speed. So, and you saw that in this game where he drives to the lane, and there's a guy right in front of him who's set up well to take a charge, and in very fluid motion, just sidesteps the guy with a little shake to the left, and it leads to an easy layup. And for a guy of his size, that's what he can do at 6'6". And I think that is something that is going to be pretty crucial for this team going forward. But I think for me, more than Dazon is this team would be 0-3 if Brandon Mahan wasn't ruled eligible right before the season began.
Yeah, you might be right.
The Texas A&M transfer has been lethal from deep. He has been an absolute necessary cog for this offense that you didn't know where the points were going to come from. And yeah, he's going to have some cold streaks, but man, he can get hot in a hurry. And then, it's early, but we can already start saying how talented is Darren Green Jr. He looks like he is made for this moment as a freshman. There's a reason why while the likes of Dre Fuller and Tony Johnson are still learning that Darren, they throwing Darren out there, and they basically said at the start of the year that they want him to be out there because he's got this special gift. He's got this special talent of shooting, and he has shown it in spades. And so if they can continue to get that perimeter shooting from Mahan and Green, with Dazon controlling everything at the top, and then you've got Avery and Colin, both of whom aren't just post players but can step out as well. I know it's only one game, but this was pretty fun. This was the future looks pretty fun.
Well, Colin Cowherd had an interesting quote that he attributed to somebody else. I can't remember who, but he said one of the rules that he's kind of that he tends to follow is if you can't be good, be interesting. I think that this team is very interesting. I don't know if they're good, but especially based on the competition that they played so far. But I think they're better than probably we anticipated, at least at this moment. I know we're 3 games in, but they are certainly interesting. They got a big game coming up against Charleston on Saturday at 2 at Addition Financial Arena.
Really good College of Charleston team. This is a team that's won 24 games or more the last 3 seasons. 2 years ago, was within a basket. Literally could have beaten Auburn up in San Diego. Lost by 4 in the NCAA tournament, and has one of the best guards that UCF's going to see, and a guy by the name of Grant Riller, who's actually from Orlando. He went to high school at Ocoee High School. He's the preseason player of the year in the Colonial. He's averaging 21 points a game. And really kind of an old school player. Doesn't depend on the 3-point shot. He's only attempted 13 threes in 4 games. He gets to the free throw line 8 times a game, but he kind of runs that offense. They're very small. Their biggest guy they usually play is Osanagi Smart, who's about 6'8", Murph. This is interesting. Charleston likes to play guards. They're very small. Their tallest guys are 6'7", 6'8". They play a lot of minutes. That's interesting with the size of UCF and the contrast there, Murph.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see if UCF changed anything, because that worked so well for them against a smaller team last time, or if Charleston just changes the way they defend. Do they harass more on the perimeter? Do they double team ball handlers? Do they press more? I mean, Illinois State pressed a little bit, and I think with this kind of team, and you saw it late in that game, guys, like this UCF team can be certainly forced into mistakes.
Yeah.
In the first half, they were shooting themselves in the foot over and over again, and I feel like if you really pressure them, that could cause them a lot of problems. But I don't know how they set it up defensively, but that'd be something that I would want to do if I could, if I was facing this UCF team right now.
Well, coming into this game, Charleston is 3-1. Their only loss was to Oklahoma State by 19. They've beaten Georgia State, South Carolina Upstate, and they won at Marshall. Interestingly enough, too, Murph, this game is, I'm on Charleston's website here, and it says, now both these teams are going to be competing in the Wooden Legacy out in Anaheim, which I know you can't wait to go see.
It's a non-bracket game.
It's a non-bracket game, so how does that even factor into the tournament?
It does not. That's the simple.
Well, what's the point of even saying that? Like a Wooden Legacy, it's in Legacy.
Because both teams are going to be in the Wooden Classic. They're just going to be in opposite brackets. And this has happened the last few years in a lot of these tournaments. It's happened at the Advocare in Orlando, where certain teams that are in that tournament, they'll just decide to play each other and get a guarantee, before the tournament. It does not account to the tournament. It's just, hey, you're getting a game in. So that's really what behind that. It's a little confusing, but that's why they do it. But both teams are going to be in Anaheim, potentially with Murph. And who knows, Murph? I know you're going to miss this game because you'll be in New Orleans and Tulane, but if you end up going to Anaheim on that Sunday, these 2 teams could play again.
Possibly so. Jeffrey, just so you know, of the 8 teams in that Wooden Classic, I believe all of them are facing another team that's also in the Wooden Classic this week.
Huh. All right. Well, you learn something new every day. All right, so that'll be that's what UCF has coming up on Saturday against Charleston before they head out to Anaheim. Their first game in Anaheim is
that game.
Huh?
Who's calling that game?
Oh, on the Charleston game on ESPN3. Is O'Donnell doing it? Yeah, Ari Shinnok and Mike O'Donnell will be doing that game. Oh, wait a minute. I'm looking at the game notes here. Who's this Eric Lopez guy filling in for Mark Daniels doing UCF hoops, huh?
We're going deep in the bullpen, man. This is the equinox.
Elo and friend of the pod, Taylor Young?
Yep. Yep, get a little reunion there. We'll be on the call there, 2 o'clock. We'll be on the air around 1:55, filling in for Mark. I appreciate the opportunity, but being a team player, helping out. And Murph, I encourage you to, I know you'll be in the press box at beautiful New Orleans there, but I know you got some, you can put the audio on, a little earpiece in there, just give it a little listen. And, in return, I will follow you on Twitter during the football game. We can make that trade.
That's right. And then I'll ask Heupel afterwards what he thought of Avery Diggs.
Beautiful. See, and I'll ask Coach Dawkins in the postgame about his reaction to the football game.
All right, this is getting out of hand now.
Probably not.
I will say this. I will definitely be listening to the basketball game, Eric Lopez, to hear you and Ty going it. And wow, okay, all right. Boy, we better not. UCF better not lose to Charleston at this game, because if they do, that might be it for you, bud.
No pressure.
Pressure.
They had now you were at. Did you, as a student, were you at the memorable game when they beat Charleston when they were ranked?
I called that game on student radio.
Right.
First ever UCF basketball win over a ranked opponent at the old arena when Charleston had won the, I think, what was the Great Alaska Shootout. They won the Great Alaska Shootout the weekend before. I think they beat someone big that year. I forget who it was. I don't know if it was Duke, but it was somebody serious. And they were ranked number 25 in the country, and UCF went and beat them on UCF's home floor. So there is some history between these two squads. And yeah, you'll be a part of that. Do you want me to get you the audio? I think I can find it.
Sure, get the audio, but more importantly, hopefully I'll just match your record of 1-0. That's games.
That's all I can ask for.
And then Murph, you're next. Next time we play College of Charleston, you'll get the call.
Right.
No thanks.
Real quick, women's basketball. They are 2-2 on the season after a couple of they got blasted in a couple games on the road. They got beat 72-37 at Belmont. They got beat 72-50 at Florida Gulf Coast. But third straight road game at Stephen F. Austin, out to Nacogdoches. It was a close game throughout, and UCF came back, got the W by 6, 63-57. KK Wright got the start in this game. She had been coming off the bench because she's been hurt a little bit. She's been nursing a couple things here and there, but 4 of 9 from the field, 10 points. Leading scorers for UCF, Masani Kava with 12, and also Siani Martin off the bench with 12, as the Knights shot 50% on the dot, including 57% in the fourth quarter to get the victory, and they held not Charleston, that's the men's team. They held Stephen F. Austin to 41% in the fourth quarter. As well, to get the victory to go in 2-2. So it's been kind of an uneven start for the women's team. After that opening win against Pitt, they also feel like they're trying to figure things out with this rotation, as we thought they would. But they have a big game on Sunday against Delaware, and then Wednesday afternoon against Stetson. That's the day before Thanksgiving. And they'll have to figure some more things out before they head out to the Cavalier Classic at Charlottesville, the home of the Virginia Cavaliers, to face UCLA and James Madison. So I think they needed
win,
that.
By the way.
Yeah, that's a good win on the road at Stephen F. Austin, isn't it?
Salvage the road trip. I think that I watched some of the Florida Gulf Coast game. I knew that was a bad matchup. Florida Gulf Coast just chucks it, man. They go 43s a game, and I'm not even joking. That's their game.
That is such an Atlantic Sun Conference team. I can't even stand it.
It's unbelievable. It's a lot of fun. I mean, they've been successful. They've won 25 games. I think they're really good. So I wasn't surprised with a young team like this, and you talked about it, still learning defensively. They struggled against Belmont and Florida Gulf Coast. Two teams are probably heavy favorites to win their respective leagues. But to win at Stephen F. Austin, important. I think it's only the fourth time that Stephen F. Austin's lost at home in the last handful of years. They're not easy to win up there in Nacogdoches, Texas. And they did well, and they got back to defense there. Give that stat again, and you just gave about that fourth quarter.
Oh, it was the shooting. I just pulled away the.
Well, here it is. Go
ahead again. Sorry.
Stephen at UCF defensively made Stephen F. Austin stone cold down in the fourth quarter.
41% in the fourth quarter shooting wise. So.
Thank you, Murph. Thank you. Jeff, that joke went all over your head there.
Yeah, it did. Sorry. So they get the W, and they're now 2-2 on the year, and they play Delaware on upcoming this Sunday at 2 p.m. Now, that's not the only on-campus sporting event that will be happening on Sunday that is worth paying attention to. When we get back, we will preview the first ever American Athletic Conference volleyball tournament. UCF is hosting the 6-team field. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to have a lot of volleyball at the venue. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be fun. We're going to take a look at what UCF's path is going to be. And then last but far from least, it's Brian Murphy fall ball time. We are going to get the breakdown.
Last on the show, number one in your hearts.
That's it. We will get the full breakdown of the Black and Gold World Series, from pitch counts to pitch effects, you name it. It's all coming from Brian Murphy here. So buckle your seatbelts, folks. Stick around. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here as we wrap up a loaded show. Lots to talk about still in advance, including what's going on this weekend on campus. It is volleyball time. UCF won their final 2 matches of the season at Temple and UConn. And the Knights are now headed, well, they're not headed anywhere. They're staying home. At 21-7, they are hosting the American Athletic Conference Volleyball Championship. Now, the reason why they're hosting is not because UCF was the number 1 overall seed, but because they were the champions from last year. Remember, this is the first ever American Athletic Conference Volleyball Championship tournament. It's a 6-team field. The 2 division winners got byes to the semifinals. So that's number 1 seed is Cincinnati, who beat UCF twice this year. Number 2 seed SMU. First 2 matches, the quarterfinals, or the first round actually, are on Friday. UCF plays at 3:30 against, they're the 3 seed. They play the number 6 seed Tulsa at 3:30, followed by number 4 seed Houston and number 5 seed Tulane at 6. Both of those matches and the semis will be on the American Digital Network. If UCF defeats Tulsa in the first match, they will face then number 2 SMU. And looking back at the season schedule for UCF, they defeated Tulsa it swept them at Tulsa back on October the 20th, and they're only meeting with the Golden Hurricane. But 3 UCF Knights made the all-conference team in volleyball. Anne-Marie Watson, McKenna Melville, and Christina Fisher, top 3 hitters for UCF. McKenna Melville, by the way, was a unanimous selection. And with that, UCF heads into this volleyball tournament, despite the fact that, I mean, really we thought this would happen, Eric. UCF, by the way, finishes 14-2 in the league. SMU 15-1. Or Cincinnati, rather, 15-1. SMU won the West with an 11-5 record. So even though the West is a little bit more stacked with Houston, Tulane, and Tulsa all at 500 or better, UCF and Cincy are the class of the conference, and it's really something that UCF at 14-2 and 21-7 overall, 11-3 at home, hosting the tournament, they have to play in the first round.
Yeah, and that's because they wanted to reward the division winners to get a bye, but that's the negative of having divisions.
I know that Todd Dagenet is sitting back in his office thinking, I knew it. I knew this would happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, because UCF Cincinnati are the 2 best teams, but because of division winners situation, that's why SMU gets the bye. Let me ask you this: who is? I don't know. You're the unofficial voice of UCF volleyball. You'll be on the PA. Can we confirm? I'm
doing PA for the tournament. Yes, all 5 matches.
Nice, beautiful. You gotta love that, Murph. That's gonna be good. Because people have asked me about this, and I just gave them I'll ask Jeff answer basically because you're around. Why is UCF playing the early games on Friday, playing at 3:30, and then at 1 on Saturday? And the reason people have brought this up, number one, it's 3:30, so now instead of 6 o'clock, more people people are still working at 3:30 on a Friday, and then Saturday, if UCF were to win, they're directly going head-to-head with men's basketball. It tips off at 2 and volleyball 1. People have wondered why wasn't UCF, especially as the host, play the later games and kind of be more, I don't know, fan-friendly.
That's a great question, and my answer is I have no idea. I have no idea. I want to ask Todd about it at some point, but maybe when we get to some media availability.
It could be two things, right? It could be the conference just set the times, right? I mean, and it's just, hey, that's the slot you're in.
It could have something to do with TV also with the digital network. That might be their own time slot that they have it to go with two matches.
Right. And if UCF got a chance to pick the times, because host teams a lot of times in a lot of the other conference championships, I'm not going to speak for volleyball since it's brand new, the other sports, usually the host team gets to pick the time. But I know there are coaches that rather play first because they get a chance to recover, longer time to recover. And like, for example, if UCF were to get to the semis and win that match, they could sit back and watch the second semifinal and scout. So I didn't know if it was strategic, if it was conference title. We're making a bigger deal than it is. I grant you that. But there are some fans, Jeff, that reached out and asked. And so I figured to ask you.
That's a good question. I wish I had an answer. I don't. I don't. That's. I'm being 100% honest with you. I have no idea. Right, if I were UCF, yeah, I would want that 6 p.m. on Friday when everyone gets off of work. And gets out of class, and then the semi. Well, I mean, the conference is probably going to set that, and actually the higher seeds are going to set that. So Cincinnati must have said, "All right, we want the nightcap at 3:30."
That's a great point, Jeff. That's a great point you just mentioned. I'm glad you brought that up because there are leagues that sometimes will give maybe the regular season champion got to pick when they want. Fly. That's a great point.
So that would be the thing that I think is probably the likeliest scenario in terms of the semifinals. I don't know about the Friday match though. What I do know is that it doesn't matter who. No one gets to choose this. On Sunday, the final is at 1:30 on ESPNU. So we could have, and if UCF gets through, obviously their first round match with Tulsa, they would play SMU. Their record against SMU this year, they played them once because they were in the other side
at SMU,
and beat them 3-1.
Tough match, by the way, real tough. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but we're getting tough draws here, and we're not making this up.
Yeah.
SMU, okay. Let's kind of quickly pair this. Cincinnati and UCF are going to be in here regardless of what happens here. Would you agree with that, Jeff?
In the tournament, yeah. No doubt about it. The RPI, by the way, Cincinnati is 25, UCF is 28. So they're in.
So they should be in. They're going to be in. In fact, this is how predictable the committee is. This is not as Paul Heyman would say, Murph, this is not a prediction. This is a spoiler.
Yes.
UCF will probably be sent on a bus trip to Gainesville for the NCAA tournament. I'm just going to go on give you that on that. But I want to focus here, Jeffrey, because not only they got to play an extra match, which now that means they got to win this championship. They got to go 3 in 3 days instead of teams like Cincinnati and SMU only have to go 2 in 2 days. And you could discuss the difference of an extra day. But UCF, if they were to beat Tulsa, is going to play an SMU team that knows they have to win that match. Their RPI is at 53. They're on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. A win over UCF at UCF would be huge for SMU. Outside of winning the conference tournament, that could be enough to get them in and get a third team into the league, which is part of the reason why this tournament exists, correct?
Exactly. The reason why, at least in terms of what I've been able to gather from hearing from some of the coaches, is that it gives a team like SMU that shot. And it also actually, here's how it helps. Like you said, their RPI is at 53. So if SMU beats UCF, they will have beaten an RPI top 30. If they beat Cincinnati and win the tournament outright, they will have beaten 2 top 30s.
Well, it wouldn't matter. They would get the automatic bid.
They would still get the automatic bid, but that might help them in terms of could they get a favorable position in the tournament. On the other hand, if you're Cincinnati and UCF, yes, you have to play this tournament, but at least if you're UCF, okay, so their path is they're playing Tulsa. All right, Tulsa, I'm looking at them down.
81.
81. Okay,
RPI.
so that's a top 100 RPI game. They're not playing, for example, they're not playing South Florida, who's at 237.
Which is why I want to applaud the coaches here for making this a 6-team tournament and not have one of these, like, everybody's invited, because that's how you hurt your RPI. If you let everybody in, that includes the bottom team. So let's give credit to the coaches, whether you are for this tournament or not. I like the fact that you have to earn making this conference tournament. I applaud that.
Well, the coaches who were in favor of this, the reason why they agreed to this format was to throw a bone to the coaches who were opposed to it, more or less. Because the coaches who were opposed to it, that's the concern that they brought up. Why would you hurt the league by hurting the top team's RPIs by playing the number? Let's say they even went to 8. Okay, so that would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That would be, ECU, UConn, Wichita, Memphis are all 6 and 10 in the league, and it would have been a logjam in there. But when I'm looking at the RPI, all right, I'm seeing, let's say, was it ECU, UConn, Wichita State's 119, ECU's 154, Memphis 173, UConn 202. So you're only playing teams in the RPI top 100. So that in turn boosts the conference in terms of, and the lowest seeded team is Houston, and they are 111th at the in the bracket. So or in the RPI. So
Tulane is 67. So
Tulane 67. So they're good. Cincinnati actually caught a break here. So
it's a regular season, the top seed. You should. Probably.
Yeah. But Houston's the lowest RPI. They're knocking on the door of the top 100 at 111. So that's why this worked out as it was. Nonetheless, if you're UCF, you want to get the W over Tulsa, you want to get the W over SMU, and then if you can get one more crack at Cincinnati on your home floor, granted they will have played one fewer match than you, but again, national TV, this will be a real showcase match for volleyball on ESPNU. It'll be Jordan Thompson, U.S. Olympic team hopeful,
three-time player of the year.
Three-time player of the year, 50 kills in a match and all that. And then how does McKenna Melville match up against her? How does Anne-Marie Watson match up against her? Can this, and then UCF would kind of come in as sort of like the underdog at home. Should be a good crowd for that match as well. So that could be a real fun Sunday. And that's what I think the conference is really looking for is, we can match up our two best teams in the final conference match of the year. They'll both be in the RPI top 30, which is exactly what they hope for and plan for, and that's what they would get if UCF faces Cincinnati. And then, we can showcase our best teams on national TV before selection time.
Yeah, I think television would prefer that. I think the league wouldn't be that upset, though, if SMU win it, because that could get them a third team into the tournament as well.
Could indeed, I think. Yeah. Right.
If SMU loses, they might be out, but it's a chance to showcase Jordan Thompson, who's probably going to hopefully be in the Olympics here in about a year in Tokyo. And our friend, Jeffrey, SB Nation, the Cincinnati version, our friends that we've had.
Yeah, Mike Schneid down the drive, right.
They were making the case about Jordan Thompson being not only the greatest volleyball player, obviously, in that program history, but one of the greatest Bearcat athletes ever.
I would put her right up there. She is. We've seen a lot of volleyball players come through UCF. I've seen a lot in the last 19 years. She's the best I've ever seen. And we've seen Stanford come through. We've seen Florida come through a couple of times. We've seen USC come through. Best player. We've seen Florida State come through a couple of times. She's the best player I've ever seen. And there's no doubt about that. Due respect to all those other players from all those other schools. She's the best I've seen. And she should be on the U.S. Olympic team. And if they decided to make her one of the, and if she's in the Mount Rushmore of Cincinnati athletes, you get no argument from me. Yep. So again, November 22nd, Friday, first round, UCF at 3:30 at home against Tulsa. If they win, they play on Saturday at 1 against SMU. And if you can't make it to the venue, both those matches are on the American Digital Network. Okay, Murph has been waiting all this first segment for this. Let us talk some baseball.
Oh, thank
you. Black and Gold World Series was finished up this past weekend. Murph was there for everything. Also, the recruiting class. The headline up there on at the top right now is the recruiting class for UCF baseball.
Yes,
but
a lot of those guys are here. Like those guys are playing now.
Right. So you got a good look at them here in this 3-game set. Sam Unger was live tweeting it. No, I'm just kidding. He wasn't live tweeting it, but he was asking you for for the update. There was some hefty conversation there, and we love you, Sam. You know that. But all right. So what are we looking at here? There's a whole bunch of new players on this team. What's the lowdown here, Murph, as we head toward the colder months?
Well, over the last weekend, they played some exhibition baseball, and things happened. Now,
all right, thank you for listening. This is
you're welcome. How much stock do we put into these things? Not much, because again, it's November, and the season doesn't start till February. But it was fun, right? Like, just to go out there and see the guys. I think, again, the takeaways from this fall season, for me, probably 3 or 4-fold. But the most important part was in one of those games against Stetson that they played, they were able to get a lot of guys who ended last year with injuries. They were able to get them out there and pitching. Joe Sheridan, Trevor Holloway, Nolan Lepkowski. So that's good. And we've got positive news on guys like Zach Helzel and Ryan Saltonstall, who are coming back apace. But as far as what went down, I think offensively, what people want to hear about, like, all right, who's going to provide for this team that's got basically 2 returning batters? It's got Dalton Wingo and Ben McCabe. I think you saw a couple of things that were interesting. Jeffrey, you mentioned that recruit article. There are a couple names mentioned in that article that kind of starred in this football season. I think one is Josh Crouch, a catcher JUCO transfer, who I believe had 3 RBIs in the game against Stetson. Another one, a guy named Trent Taylor, who right now they have listed as a utility player. He had a 2-run triple and a 2-run double over the course of this fall season. But I think there were a lot of guys who shined. Also on the mound, Jalen Whitehead, I believe, struck out. Again, stats are hard to count because they're not really kept, but I believe Jalen Whitehead struck out somewhere around 18 guys in the span of like 10 or 11 innings this fall season.
That seems pretty good.
It was great, and he barely gave up a hit, by the way, while doing it.
Or should I be concerned about the hitting? That's the problem with inter-squad games.
But also a guy that I led off my conversation with Greg Lovelady after the final game of the Black and Gold World Series, with Eric Lopez by my side asking questions as well. I asked him about Jeffrey Pena. Jeffrey Pena was really last year just a pinch runner type of guy. I believe got 11 at bats all year.
He scored the game-winning run in the walk-off against Memphis in Clearwater, the game that I called for the American Digital Network.
Yes, he did. And he also had the game-winning RBI to win the Black and Gold World Series for Team Black on a walk-off walk. And there was much rejoicing, and he got dogpiled. But I thought in this fall overall, he looked impressive at the plate, and we've never really seen him as much of a hitter. So he had a couple of hits and an RBI in one game. He had an opposite field home run in the finale of the Black and Gold World Series, which is like kind of eye-opening for a guy like him. So that's where I started my conversation with Greg Lovelady, as you're about to hear, is what do we expect of Jeffrey Pena this season? So what do you think about Jeffrey's role going into this season?
Well, I mean, I think he's really done what he can to lock down the center field position. Offensively, he's obviously been able to run and play really good defense, but offensively, he has made unbelievable strides. I mean, to see him hit an oppo home run is Really remarkable. It's just a testament to him and how much work he's put in the weight room, to Teddy and Barrett, just working really, really hard with him in the cage. He had a great summer, and it's just really transformed. I think he just feels more confident. Obviously, the language barrier and stuff like that, and just getting more comfortable and the new guys and stuff, I just think it was a little bit of a grind for him last year, and just like a totally different person. So he's really made huge offensive strides and going to be a major part of our team, offensively and defensively. So it's good to see. I mean, we knew we needed somebody in center field defensively, and we knew that we could trust him, but we needed to see some more stuff offensively out of him, and we've definitely seen it so far.
Yeah. Jalen, not only tonight, but again, Stetson two good innings, and then tonight I think he struck out 7.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you see from him?
Yeah, I mean, again, just the comfortability and understanding who he is and what his strengths are. A guy that's obviously a fifth-year senior and been through this process a lot and gone through some ups and downs, and he's shown some really great outings and some really bad outings over his career, especially last year. He didn't pitch a lot 2 years ago, but last year there was days where he'd go 3 great innings, and there's days where he'd come in and give up a couple runs, and just kind of again that roller coaster ride. But the more comfortable you get, the more you really understand how to pitch and what you can do, and what trying to stay within yourself and mentally. I mean, he's a guy that really understands the mental game and has really changed. I think a lot of things sped up on him. Not putting pressure on himself, but wanting to do good and wanting to do well, I think was really a problem for him. And just the fact that he's relaxing, and again, he had second and third, nobody out, and he strikes out the side. And we talk about that all the time, that you can't do that if you're like, oh my gosh, second and third, like I'm going to give up runs in this inning, and like, how am I going to get out of it? Like, this is bad. No, man, I'm just going to win this pitch. And I think that he's really done mentally where I think he would have panicked and it would have ran into a big inning last year or the year before. This year, as a guy that's been through and understands how important the mental game is, he handles that situation beautifully and is able to get out of it.
I think offensively there are a number of guys who I think showed out. Josh Crouch, Trent Taylor, Pablo Ruiz. Who stood out to you, basically?
Yeah, well, Jordan Rathbone's really had a great couple weeks, especially the last couple games, hitting the ball hard, getting some huge hits. Obviously, Nick Romano's done some good things. And really stood out. Crouch has been great all fall, led our team in home runs and pretty much hitting.
My only contribution.
Obviously, Jeffrey has done some tremendous things. I mean, he got lead off the game with a hit, I think in game 1 or game 2, and then obviously the home run today, and then base hit bunting. And, obviously, Noah Orlando gets a big hit. So, I mean, again, I think just a lot of guys. Ben McCabe got 2 hits today, so hasn't had a great fall offensively, so it was good to see him get a couple hits. So, I think from top to bottom, I just saw a lot of good things from a lot of good guys. I was unfortunate that Jostin, wasn't able to finish the fall and stuff, but obviously we think he'll be healthy for the season. He was our best guy all fall up until the point of the first Stetson game. So, Connor Allen has really been a different player the last couple of weeks. I think again, just the comfortability and getting situated, and obviously Ted and Barrett have done a great job, I think, offensively of really giving the guys some identity and having great approaches at the plate. And I think it showed. I mean, obviously tonight we walked 9 times, so and we were able to put together big hits. And we scored runs late. I mean, off bullpen guys. I mean, we didn't do a very good job off the 2 starters, but late in the game you got to find a way to score runs and get big hits, and we were able to do that.
I think pitching-wise, it's good to see so many of the guys who were hurt on the mound. So especially at Stetson, when you got Joe, Nolan, Trevor, all in the same game. I mean, so what stands out to you on the mound from this fall?
Yeah, I mean, again, just the depth. And now, of course, I said that last time, how deep we're going to be on the mound, and the injury bug got us. But I mean, to see, we've got 6 guys that I feel like can start for us. I feel like we've got a depth in the bullpen, obviously, with guys that are still coming back, Ryan Saltonstall and Levkowski and Hulsel. Obviously, Joe is pitching well, and he's not even, I don't think, close to where he'll be when it comes to the season. So, I mean, we're going to have the depth. I think we're going to have 11 or 12 guys that can really pitch. I mean, Hunter Patterson did a great job as a young guy. So, I mean, I think we're going to have the depth on the mound that's really going to be able to mix and match some things and not really overuse guys like we kind of had to last year with Hakinson and Kemp, where we just felt like we ran them a little bit too hot because we just didn't have the depth of the injuries. So I think we'll have the injuries to keep it fresh, to mix up looks, to mix and match, keep guys fresh for the end of the year, and really give I think other offensive teams never an opportunity to get comfortable against any one guy.
Is there any part of the fall that surprised you? Maybe any individual surprised you, or any aspects of the team that surprised you? Maybe you didn't expect this fall.
No, I mean, I guess the biggest surprise was with 20 new players and 13 freshmen. I mean, what we talked about just there in the meeting, it was like the first day of practice. I think all of us coaches were like, oh, wow, like we are a ways away. And the kids never wavered. They just worked hard. They showed up every day. And the amount of, I mean, just the growth from day one of team practice to the last day of team practice was unbelievable. I mean, just an immense amount of work put into it, but growth. And guys just getting comfortable. And just these freshmen, I mean, they're really my first group, first recruiting class I really got to recruit from by the time, before, at the same time as every other school, and really build relationships and get the right kids. And there's the competitiveness and the work ethic, and they've really done a great job of setting the tone, mixing in and really pushing the older guys. And I think it's made our team better. I think we have the depth for real competition at every position. We just haven't had that kind of depth. And it's kind of been, here's your guys and the 9 guys, and those guys are looking over their shoulder going, there's nobody here. Like, I don't have any worries. You know what I mean? And now it's, man, like, you got Nick Romano and Connor Allen battling out, and you got 5 infielders battling it out. Like, you've got outfielders, DHs battling out. You got catchers battling. I mean, and again, on the mound, there's 6 or 7 guys that can start, I think, for us right now. There's only 3 or 4 spots. So that's real competition. We've usually had decent competition on the mound, but we're deeper again on the mound than I think we've ever been. And, the experience is what we lack offensively, but again, I think that this fall was a great growth opportunity. I think the guys did a tremendous job of really getting after it. They're definitely a whole lot better than they were, and I think that's been the biggest surprise, just to see the growth as fast as it happened.
I know last time I talked to you, it was about Wingo. The only other offensive starter who's really back is Ben McCabe. As a catcher, too, just how critical is he going to be? Yeah, I mean, big. I mean, Josh Crouch is really good. I mean, he's got a chance to really be a big part of our offense and a big part, he is a really good receiver. So, again, I think those guys will split. I'd like to see more out of Ben. You know what I mean? Like, I think that he has the ability and what he's done last year and what he showed, like, at that age as a freshman to do what he did. Like, he set the bar really, really high for him. And obviously I have really high expectations for that position. I thought he had an okay fall. I think he can be way better. He's still got room for growth, and he's really got to take that next step. But we're just having those 2 guys. I don't have to run one of them out there, 60 starts out of 65 games. Like, I can split it, and both those guys I trust and know that they are a big part. They've done a great job getting to know the pitching staff. But that position, is, again, as high as the expectations I have, and maybe they don't ever, I don't know if they'll ever live up to my expectations, you know what I mean? But to know you have 2 guys that can go out there and really command the strike zone in terms of helping pitchers and being a help to them, I think, just gives us, especially the pitchers, some peace of mind.
With the young roster, do you have leaders already maturing here, developed here, even just to fall?
I mean, obviously the returners have done a great job. I mean, Dalton is an unbelievable leader. Jalen, Saltonstall, Litchfield, Helsel. On the mound, I mean, we got great leadership, and offensively, with only Dalton really being the older guy. But, a guy like Jordan Rathbone has done a great job of just getting after it. And then the freshmen, they all push and work. I mean, Pablo and JJ, Gabe Cabrera, like, those guys really care. They want to win. They're one of the most competitive groups I've ever coached in terms of just being that young and coming right in and just wanting to win and everything that we do, and whether it's a sprint or in the weight room or doing some drill in the cage, like, they want to win, like they want to be the best, but not in a selfish way. Like, they're also the guys that we get done doing some really hard conditioning, and I turn around and these young guys are going back and pushing other guys to finish, you know what I mean? And let's go, we got to get better. Like, let's go, we got you. And that kind of stuff we just haven't had. And so just to see this young group really come in, and I mean, it's kind of like, an old dog getting a puppy, where it's like, you kind of go through the motions, and all of a sudden you get this puppy that just wants to run around, and it's like, all right, like, I guess I got to keep up with it. Like, I really felt like that they brought some energy that the older guys were like, whoa, like, we're not going to let these guys out energy us. And so that's really kind of maybe put a little pep in those older guys' step, where, maybe in the past it's like, it's just another fall my senior year, like, just the fall, like, I'm here for the season, where, man, like, these young guys are really bringing energy. Like, I got to match it. And I think that they've been great for our program and great for this team, because they've really made everyone else up their game.
So there's Coach Lovelady, along with me and Eric Lopez, wrapping up the Black and Gold World Series. You heard him talk about
cold weather too.
Baby, it was
nothing like cold weather baseball, baby.
It was miserable, but it was fun. You heard him talk about how Jeffrey Pena is going to be probably their starting center fielder, how he wants to see more out of Ben McCabe. and has really been impressed with Josh Crouch. Talking about Jalen Whitehead sort of settling in, and just a lot of other topics there. Again, I don't want to get too far out in front. Obviously, it's hard for me not to get excited because it's baseball. But I am reminded that last November, Anthony George, the catcher, was really the star of fall ball. He was outstanding. I think he had a fall ball game last year in which he hit 2 home runs, and he was coming back from an injury that cost him all but 2 games of the 2018 season. So there were high hopes for him after that fall ball, and he really didn't do a ton last season. So again, you don't want to overrate exhibition baseball, but at least they're out there and at least they look healthy and everyone's on pace, and we're all waiting for the second week of February, basically.
Baseball
Less than 3 months away, baby. Less than 3 months from the first pitch. Valentine's favorite. What? Nothing says more than love, right? Valentine's night than opening day of college baseball, huh, Murph?
That's right. I mean, that's why they hired Lovelady.
That's right.
Branding and the marketing.
Perfect.
Pretty good. Real quick, Murph. A couple of my impressions as I hung out with Murph. Which, Jeff, by the way, I recommend. Maybe we can do like an auction on Banneret where we do a prize and the winner gets to sit with Murph and watch a baseball with him, because it's really phenomenal. It's entertaining as good as it gets. I mean, I loved it. It was one of my favorite.
Either that or it's going to get us all in trouble. But anyway.
Either way. Couple thoughts that jumped out at me. Obviously, you talked about the youth that this team has, but Coach Lovelady mentioned, this is his first finally players that he's actually recruited that are on this roster this year. Finally,
right? All his guys, right?
Right, Murph. And I think, and he talked about the young guys being aggressive and exciting, and I think that's something we tend to forget when we evaluate coaches here. And I think, Murph, and we kind of forget that Greg Lovelady got here late because Terry Rooney took the job to be the pitching coach at Alabama late, I want to say it was a couple months after the season. And so he came in late and kind of got a late start in the whole recruiting thing. And now we're going to see some of his players.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, but up until now, he had sort of been recruiting off of what Terry Rooney had sort of done, and he was able to impress upon recruits about that 2017 season when he won the conference championship regular season. But now he's got 3 full seasons here. I remember my first gig for the Black and Gold Banneret was sitting in with Jeff Sharon as we interviewed Greg Lovelady for what was his first meet with the Orlando media.
That's right.
Back in February 2017.
Back when there were jackhammers going outside of his office because they were working on the stadium, right? They
were still working on the stadium. But now I think you're right. Like this is his team now. I mean, clearly there are no holdovers left. I mean, everything that you see on the field was brought in with Greg Lovelady's basically sign off. So we'll see how it works out. I think it's going to be a bumpy season, much like basketball, in which I think there's a lot of interesting pieces here, but I just don't know how it all fits together. And, it's going to be sort of a lot of learning and growing pains as we go through it.
Well, and doesn't the pitching have to carry them, especially early with so many new position players as they figure themselves out? There's a lot of arms, healthy, knock on wood, right now, coming back. I mean, I really was impressed with Jalen and how he looked in person. I know it's football, but he looked, and Coach Lovelady talked about it, there is that extra year of experience. And I feel like, Murph, especially early on, they're going to play at Auburn, for example. I know early in the year and things like that their pitching probably has to carry them until this offense kind of figures out who they are.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the staple of many Greg Lovelady teams is he wants to limit you, and then he wants to get into his bullpen and shorten the game. And he hopes to do that this year with guys like Billy McKay and a guy that we saw last year in Zach Helzel. Jeffrey Hakinson is back, probably going to be maybe looking at the closer's role again. And so he wants to always shorten games, get to his bullpen, and sort of shut you down from there. So, yeah, I think pitching's going to have to carry them, but I don't think that's any different than what his recipe for victory has already been for the first 3 seasons he's been here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least now we have some names to go with some faces. I mean, that's the other thing. I thought that, you thought that basketball had a huge amount of roster turnover. Take a look at what baseball's done. It's pretty much, a whole new crew of guys out here. And by the way, I just want to put this out there. My favorite name of one of the newcomers, Major Posey.
Major Posey.
Oh, okay.
Major Posey.
See, we thought we were going to go with Crouch. That's been kind of a sense, right? That's been the popular one, right?
No, give me this. Yeah, big kid, 6'4", righty from Tallahassee.
Well, he's a catcher, too. He's a catcher, so of course his name is Crouch.
I didn't even think about that. That's
and
fantastic.
He's going to be a big part of this offense, as Lovelady alluded to, and there's some depth here. I mean, there's going to be – this is going to be an interesting competition here, and you alluded to it, Murph, about McCade. I mean, there's some depth here. I mean, Crouch is going to be a part of this, either catching or they figure it out. They'll find if he's hitting, he'll find him in the plate. But I think, I got a sense for the first time since I've known Greg here in the last few years, I think he's excited about some of the depth possibilities he's got here, where there's legit competition, not like, well, this guy, there's no real competition. We already know who's going to be here or here. There's some legit competition here.
Well, there are so many spots up for grabs that there are there are lots of candidates that could possibly impact this team because there are just so many jobs that are not filled. And yeah, I think, you brought it up. That was interesting how he kind of turned my question about Ben McCabe into really more about, well, we like Josh Crouch. McCabe is sort of seen as like, not granted the starting catcher job, but because he is one of the returners and did play pretty well as a freshman last year, you would imagine he's got the inside track, and then he used that time to basically say, we really like what Josh Crouch is, and I think Ben McCabe needs to get better. So he's kind of calling Ben out a little bit. So I think that's, and
oh boy, Murph is stirring the pot. Here we go.
I would say it's competition, though, Murph. I mean, that's what we want, right? I mean, you got to push each other.
Absolutely. But I think he's challenging Ben McCabe. And I love that. You're going to get that from him quite a bit. And I love for that reason. He does not wade in too much coach speak. He's pretty fun. And, so I did not expect him to basically say that they need Ben McCabe to be better. I thought he'd be complimentary, but, hey, he's not going to be like that. He's going to tell you if the guy's not doing well enough, he's not doing well enough. Eric, I mean, we can't even go on the record with some of the things that he has said and then wanted to take back because he, didn't mean to say something about some guy. I mean, it's just, that's what he is. He's kind of unfiltered at times, and it's fun.
Greg Lovelady, the most unplugged coach on all of UCF.
He's got a little CM Punk, right? And just when you think you have all the answers, he changes.
You've been waiting an hour and a half to drop that one, haven't you, Lopez?
That's right. Yes, it is. I'm so fired up this week. It's unbelievable. Plus, I think that's a record 3 wrestling references, which I'm excited about.
One of which went way over my head. Anyway, all right. So with that, I think we've pretty much covered everything, right?
Feeling good, Murph. You got that out of February 14th, 6 o'clock at the John. Siena UCF, man, first pitch.
Siena's back.
I trust you when you say that, Eric, because I'm still waiting for UCF to release their baseball schedule, but whatever.
For the record, I got it because Siena released their schedule. So that's where I got it from. I don't want to get anybody. Siena released their schedule, and they come on, Merv, you don't need a schedule release to know the tradition that is Siena and UCF to open the season. Come on.
The Monmouth Hawks would like a word with you, Eric Lopez, about that. All right, let's wrap this thing up here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Murph, I'll start with you. What you got coming up? I know you got your checklist coming and all that, right?
Yeah, the checklist, or whatever you want to call it, will be coming out.
The season's going to come to an end, guys. You might want to, come to an end.
It's really the new name of the thing. There's no name. The name now is whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so that'll be coming out either the night before or the
Murphy's Laws. I've got it. Murphy's Laws. That's what we're going to call it.
Ew. Anyway, before I was rudely interrupted by this more awful puns, it'll come out the night before the game since it's an early start on Saturday. I will be in New Orleans for Tulane and UCF. I will get there Friday night. I will not be partying too hard on Friday night because it's an early start Saturday.
Yeah, right.
And then I won't party very hard Saturday night either, because I will be at the Saints-Panthers game the following day.
Oh, that's the party.
As media at the Superdome, I will be looking to talk to Traquan Smith and Latavius Murray and also Teddy Bridgewater, because if you listen to the Mackenzie Milton interview from last week, Mackenzie talked about how he had been in touch with Teddy Bridgewater and talked to him about the road back from massive career-threatening knee injuries, which Teddy has good experience in. And you can see that Teddy's made it back, and he played really well and plays Drew Brees this year. Some people would say he played better than Drew Brees, to which I would say you're wrong, but he still played very well.
Fantasy guru Brian Murphy making an appearance on the show.
So that's what I'm looking forward to doing on Sunday. Hopefully, get to talk to those three guys with UCF ties, and then we'll see what happens from there. We come back, and then we're ready for the last game of the season.
Eric, what you got?
Well, as it was broken earlier on this show, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have the honor of calling UCF men's basketball Saturday, 2:00 with Taylor Young. Game will be on. You can listen to it on UCFKnights.com. We encourage you to do that. With all due respect to my good friend Michael Donald, it'll be on ESPN3 version. 2:00 tip will be on at 1:50. Looking forward to UCF in Charleston. I'll be doing that while Murph is at the football game, and then Sunday I will be doing stats for the ESPNU crew for the American Conference Championship match, Jeffrey. I will be wearing a headset. I will be keeping track of stats, kills, digs, which means if Jordan Thompson's in that, that's how I make my money.
Yep.
So we're going to have doing stats from ESPNU broadcast of the American Conference Championship match on Sunday, 1:30, as you mentioned. And then I'm heading over next door to the track and field soccer complex because I will have the call of UCF's second-round NCAA tournament match, which will be on UCFKnights.com on Twitch and on NCAA.com to be determined who our opponent will be. I think it's going to be Missouri State, but we'll know officially Thursday night because Missouri State hosts Denver. I will have the call on that. So, Murph, you don't have to come, but, you're watching football. You're watching the Patriots beat up on the Cowboys there. You can just, plug me in there as well. And so I'll be doing all that, catching a little volleyball, doing men's hoops, a little bit of a men's soccer. We're everywhere, folks. We're the Black and Gold Banneret. We're the only entity, boys, that could say we're pretty much at every UCF.
We are. That's what we pride ourselves on.
Because we couldn't find anybody for it.
I want you to make sure that you follow Jeremy Brenner, also on Twitter, who's doing a lot of work with men's and women's basketball. Luke Saris as well. Luke Saris SBN on Twitter, doing some more basketball work as well, and his outstanding football previews. Heading into the Tulane game as well.
And read my article, too, where I ripped the committee about men's soccer. More detail.
Yes, the Blowtorch article is up there. Make sure you read that. Make sure you also read Anthony Lenahan's breakdown of Tulane. And again, congratulations on behalf of all of us to Anthony on joining us here. We're really happy to have him on board. And thanks especially to you. Oh, also, I did not want to pass this up as well. Make sure you take a look at, as well, Chaz Short, CFB * on Twitter. Great discussion he had with Dr. Nathan Kalman Lamb of Duke University on the name, image, and likeness issue and a number of other issues that the NCAA is facing. So we did a little big picture stuff. If you look ahead to what, if you're thinking about, what's the future of football right now, what is the future of the NCAA and its role in governing student athletes and college sports? This is a great discussion that you want to have. I'm going to thank Dr. Nathan Kalman Lamb from Duke University for his insight on this as well. Great conversation. If you get the chance to listen to read it, it's really fantastic. So, by the way,
where
thanks.
Where are you going to be, Jeffrey, this week?
Oh, where am I going to be? I will be at volleyball for all 5 matches, doing PA for all 5, starting with Friday afternoon. So it will be a busy weekend for me. Saturday afternoon, the double dip, and then the championship match on Sunday. So we'll all, I'm sure, run into each other. Well, I know I'll run into you at the championship match, Eric. So that'll be.
If you run into me, something is going terribly wrong.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But hey, that's like I said, we'll be there and we'll be covering it live as we all do. And follow us on Twitter, UCF_Banneret, for all the latest. For Eric Lopez and Brian Murphy, and also our guest from earlier today, Anthony Lenahan. I'm Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for listening to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Don't forget to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are SB Nation's home for your UCF Knights. Enjoy the weekend. Catch you next week.